Hello everyone, welcome to Geeks and Barbells. Today we are going to be doing the first episode of Book Talk. I realized for anyone who has been listening to the Geeks and Barbells podcast, which you can find on this channel, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, I am mainly focused on the act of creativity, health, wellness, how that all interacts, and how to really kind of make your life as awesome as possible so that you can enjoy things to the fullest. And I do also want to geek out on books, on games, on anime, on film, and also sometimes more focused on fitness and on nutrition. And I think it would be better if I separate those out directly on the YouTube channel. So today, as I said, is going to be the first episode of Book Talk. And I thought, what is the best book to start with? And that is, of course, Harry Potter. This is my display, by the way. If ever you want some really cool artwork, head to display.com. It costs so much money, but worth it. Really beautiful. Usually you can magnet them on the wall, but I lost my magnets. So sad. So, what are we going to talk about? Am I going to review Harry Potter? To a degree, but what I'd like to do is more so looking at Harry Potter overall and the effect it had on my generation. So, it came out in 1999. I was still in primary school. I believe I was the exact same age or about the same age as Harry. I was 11, 12 or so at the time. I can't recall. In 1999. I'm old now. It was quite a different experience. It's something I've never seen happen again since I remember every year my father would go and get the newest book that had just come out. I would finish it the same day, usually. Didn't matter how big it was. You know, those books started relatively small. The first Harry Potter book was something like 250 pages, if even, and then expanded outwards, like 600, 700 pages in the further novels, and it was just amazing at the time to me. And I had my first reading experiences, although when I was very, very young, I might have read a couple of little fantasy novels, but my first real experiences with books and reading any kind of fantasy was Wheel of Time, Malazan Book of the Fallen, uh, the Belgariad, the Malorian, the Lord of the Rings. So for anyone who knows, these are quite hefty novels, especially the Wheel of Time and especially the Malazan. And so Harry Potter was sort of a step backwards for me in terms of quality, in terms of character development, in terms of world development. But Harry Potter was intoxicating. Daniel Green actually recently made a really good video about like the history of young adult. I don't even want to call it a genre, but just that category of books. Super interesting. You should check out his YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. He's awesome. And he talks about, how Harry Potter just changed the game in terms of the popularity. I mean, the amount of money it made, how much it drew people in. And that was a big thing for me. It really changed. It sort of was like before then I was the weird kid constantly reading books, and all of a sudden everybody was reading those books. Now, granted, for most of the rest of primary school and high school, I was still the weird kid mostly by himself reading books, but it was more acceptable for me to be a geek about it, which was nice. Harry Potter was just really, really awesome at the time. It was such a simpler read comparatively to things like Wheel of Time, and allowed me to really, really delve into a world again and again and again. I've probably read those books 50 times, if not more. It was a normal thing for me to be rereading it until maybe only the last couple of years. I would read it at least 3-4 times a year, the entire series. And I still do read it once or twice a year most of the time, if not a little bit more. It's kind of my go-to nostalgic, I'm tired, I'm kind of sad, I want to read something that's comforting novel. And the Harry Potter books were not just unique for how popular they became. Just the fact, Lord of the Rings already had its own special something because of its uniqueness. It pretty much invented high fantasy. So when it got created into a film, it was kind of a work of art. Like the Lord of the Rings films were phenomenal. They're still, to this day, the best fantasy readaptations onto film or TV that has ever been made. No one can beat them in terms of the quality of the acting, the scenes, how they were shot, the visuals. Just using costume design and very minimal CGI, they were able to do much better than almost all fantasy has been done to this day. Harry Potter was different, though. It was really the first fantasy series put to film for everybody. And personally, I did not like the films that much. It got a bit better once you hit the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th. I think because the actors and actresses were older, they were more adept, they were able to bring more quality to the roles, and there was much more combat and fighting, so it actually made things a little bit less childish, a little bit more interesting to watch in film. Whereas for me, and this is the problem I think a lot with books made into series, TV shows or film, is that many novels, what's really great about them is being in the head of your characters, which you just can't get in film or TV. And so I think in the first couple of Harry Potter films, you just lose out a lot on that. But that's just my opinion. As for the books are amazing for what they are. I can still reread the series and still enjoy them immensely. Every single book, it gets more pleasurable with each novel as you go along because it does get higher quality. But there is a lot of nonsense in the Harry Potter books. There is a lot of things that simply make no sense. And that's the joy of fantasy, is that you can kind of cover up loopholes and plot holes and just excuse bad character development or bad world development because it's magic. So probably an easy example, and many people have spoken about this, is Dumbledore's relationship with Harry. Now, this is kind of glossed over in the novel, saying like he was trying to just allow Harry to have a childhood. So he was not preparing him as he should have been. He was not training him. There's so many things. Dumbledore knew for quite a long time that Harry would have to at least meet Voldemort and combat him. And then eventually knew that he would have to die. And yet he simply just did not in any way prepare Harry. Now, his logic of allowing Harry to deal with the different things that were happening to him in each novel, that was in a sense like allowing him to go his own path. But that's just complete negligence. He's allowing little children to deal with that. Now, again, within the Harry Potter world, adulthood starts at a very young age. People finish in their 7th year and they go directly into government even, which for any one of us, a 17-year-old going into any form of government in a serious capacity seems ridiculous. We have colleges and university and people work other jobs first. Yet in the Harry Potter world, people just kind of pop into it. So there's an expectation that you will become an adult much quicker in their world. But in many ways, it's still not logical because there are many halflings. There are muggles, half-breeds, half and halves, so-sos. So Harry was raised among muggles his entire life. He was raised among humans. Hermione was raised among humans her entire life. And yet, within the wizarding world, so many people, even the ones being raised in the human world, act as though certain things are acceptable or should have gone that way. When the reality is, if these kids would have come home and told their parents any of this stuff, their parents would have lost their minds. Lost their minds. I try to imagine Hermione telling her parents about any of the things that were happening at the school, or that they were allowed to do, or that they were experiencing at such a young age. She would never have been allowed to go back to her school. It's not realistic in the slightest. Having the creatures they have, such as the Aragog in the second book, they become aware that there's these gigantic spiders living in the forest right beside them. And the fact that that is just accepted when there are little children who we know children are dumb and will not listen and go into the forest when they're not supposed to. But yet they know that there's man-eating creatures in that forest. That doesn't seem rational. But in the Harry Potter world, it's accepted. In the same way that Ronald Weasley's father, who's like a muggle addict, you can say. He loves all these things about muggles, and yet he's still asking Harry questions about even the most simplest of devices and confused as to how they work. Ronald Weasley, who's young, he doesn't really know how to use the telephone. He's like screaming into it. That doesn't make any sense. What is the purpose of using owls when we have telephones? It doesn't seem, if you're using it for secrecy, that doesn't seem to make much sense, because a bunch of owls flying everywhere would be noticed. Letters and notes would be intercepted simply by accident. These things are all part of a soft magic system in Harry Potter world. So it's things that they get away with simply by not explaining them. And the Harry Potter world is awash with this stuff. There's just so much that magically is not explained, and many other things that do not make any logical sense in the light of that these people are all living right beside a highly technologically advanced people. The fact that they don't even know what a gun is. It's written in the newspaper, I believe, in the third book, where there's like an explanation of what a gun is because they think Sirius Black might have one. Sirius Black is being shown on the Muggle news as having a gun, so that human people would be on the lookout for him also. And they're being told he has a gun because they can't tell him that he has a wand. Tell us that he has a wand. So the fact that just because people are part of the magical world wouldn't know what a gun is, they would never. No one's watching television. No one's using the internet. The internet is one of the greatest developments in human civilization. Magic is amazing, but there's no fundamental reason why the people would not be using the internet. And because there's so many people who are not full bloods, who are half bloods, who have Muggle parentage or full Muggle parentage, they would become part of government and other things also, and they would know all this stuff. And so J.K. Rowling attempts to make a world that's separate from ours, but it ends up being slightly ridiculous because of it. Whereas then when you see the new films Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, you see a kind of normalcy. Like the wizards in the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them in the United States are perfectly interacting. They know that, they're living in human buildings. They're speaking with humans. They're interacting with them. They know what things are. So that stuff doesn't vibe. It doesn't make sense. And I think it would have been a hell of a lot more interesting if there was some talk, some explanation of why, what is the justification for waving your wand around and saying Avada Kedavra when someone can just come up to you with a pistol and shoot you in the head? There is defensive magic for sure, but magic has to make sense. If you cast a magical spell, such as a shielding spell, it has to be protecting against a certain thing. So it's protecting against magical energy. Does that mean it's going to, if a sorcerer or sorceress casts a spell at you and you cast a defensive spell, and at the same time you grab a piece of metal and whip it at their head and does it go through the shield and whack them in the head, and then they're able to cast a spell where you're distracted to kill you? Can someone sneak up behind you and stab you in the back? These are rational, logical questions, and they were sort of acceptable in the first like 2 books, maybe the third, because there was a lot more of a childish feel to it. But once you started hitting the 4th book, the 5th book, the 6th book, the 7th book, the tone became much more serious, much more severe. They were touching upon a lot of death, a lot of violence, torture, all sorts of very serious things. And so a lot of the stuff that you just would accept in the 1st or 2nd book, because you're just like little children, magic, it fell short. And upon further reading, as you get a bit older and you read through it, it becomes sort of unacceptable. The world could have been developed much more accurately and made a lot more sense if J.K. Rowling had put a little bit more effort into actually explaining why this separation between the human world and the wizarding world is there. Now, it is partly explained by the fact that there is huge overtones of racism, classism. I didn't really see any actual things of sexism within the Harry Potter world. She kind of kept that out, but there's definitely a lot of racism, although racism is kind of muted out in the sense that it's not racism in the way we think of it. It's purebloods versus non-purebloods. So do you have pure magical parentage, or are you a half-breed, or both your parents are muggles and you just happen to have magic? So it's a form of racism, or it's not a race. It's a bit of a strange way to think of it. We'll call it racism for lack of a better way to explain it. And of course, there's huge amounts of classism. The stronger you are, where you're working in government, the money you're making. You see that a lot between the Malfoys and the Weasleys. It's a big contrast. If I remember correctly, J.K. Rowling was very inspired by her work in South Africa, I believe, where she saw a lot of these like huge inequities in the country. I think it was in South Africa. And so she tries to get into some deeper, bigger issues, but they're actually almost never addressed. She shows them, but once you're past the 7th book, even though people are fighting against Voldemort and not with him, no one ever really addresses these issues. Things just kind of go back to normal. Lupin unfortunately dies, still not accepted by society because of his werewolf curse. No one ever really comes clean and expresses any kind of remorse or talk about the fact that the reason Voldemort was able to gain so much power is because people do harbor those kinds of thoughts and separations. Communication is such a bad issue in the wizarding world because they're still using owls. Barty Crouch, when he escaped in the 4th novel and attempted to warn Harry during the Triwizard Tournament, could have just picked up the phone if they had a phone and called someone and said what was happening. Instead, he had to use all that complicated stuff when he could have just taken over control and dialed a phone number. So there's a lot of stuff that's really, really not addressed well within the Harry Potter series. I will try to break this down. This is like a general idea brainstorming of how we can view how Harry Potter could have been better and what was really great about it. So I definitely want to end on a positive note. So one of the best things about Harry Potter, for sure, is Hermione Granger and Hermione Granger's character development. Even though, look, I see the pros and cons of Ronald Weasley. I see the pros and cons of Harry. Hermione is really the person who set the stage for the entire series. She is the reason why it made sense and why they survived for so long, even though Harry and Ron both play some integral parts. But Hermione, as far as I'm concerned, especially considering it was done in 1999, is one of the best female characters I have ever read, because there was no attempt. I find it in many books, whether it's a female author or a male author, when they write a female character and they're trying to make her be more forceful, more in charge, it's done in a way that doesn't seem realistic. Whereas J.K. Rowling managed to create a character who you see her act her age, as in she acts like an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old. She acts like a kid, but she's smart, whipcord smart. And you see how her intelligence causes her problems because she doesn't know how to empathize. She doesn't know how to connect. But then she slowly learns, not only gets smarter, but gets physically and mentally and emotionally tougher. I never read Hermione's character and felt she was sexualized in any way, overly feminized in any way. She was just, you always knew she was a woman, but you also never thought of her as a woman. She was just Hermione. She was awesome. She was smart. She made mistakes sometimes. She got emotional sometimes. She was human, pure human. And it was just this great development of a female character that the fact that she was a woman played almost zero part in it. Unfortunately, that happens a lot with female characters. It happens a lot with male characters also. Like, you always knew Ron was a guy. You always knew Harry, to a lesser degree, was a guy also. I think Harry would have been a lot better off. I think she just did really bad with the relationships. As soon as Harry was involved with Cho Chang and his relationship with Ginny, it brought into focus like that he was a boy, and it was done really badly and it was stupid. Now you could say it's just because they were kids, blah, 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 but it was just awkwardly done and kind of like took away from important parts of the story. Ronald Weasley's relationship with, I think it was Luna Lovegood. Not Luna Lovegood, sorry. Lavender Brown, I believe, was sort of made sense due to his character, but was ridiculous. And the fact that he ended up with Hermione after, when they simply don't fit together in any shape or form. Not really. That's my opinion. Anyway, I'm rambling off. So I definitely think one of the pros of the series is really just having a really awesome female character, a female lead. Some people might not think of her as the lead because everything's kind of done through the perspective of Harry, but Hermione shapes and forms so much of who Harry becomes. Her presence is integral to pretty much every single story scene. She's the reason they're able to do so much of the stuff. Harry is just the driving force. He's kind of the courage. He's not a stupid kid. He definitely has intelligence, but she is the reason why Harry becomes Harry. Yeah, so we'll leave it off at that. I hope you like hearing my little ramble, my rant about the Harry Potter series. Tell me if you disagree, agree, where else do you think I should go in this series? Because I definitely want to start exploring specific topics. I'm going to really try to break it down, maybe separate out some books, and really explore some specific themes in the ways that they positively and negatively affected me growing up, and how I think they can improve. And I would definitely love to hear how people think about this stuff, because Harry Potter has been the kind of series that drives me nuts because I love it, but I hate it in many ways. So comment, like, subscribe, check out the Geeks and Barbells podcast if you're interested. You could check out the website as well, where I get into a whole bunch of other stuff. That is www.geeksnbarbells.com. And enjoy your quarantine, my lovely friends. Enjoy it, because it's better than working in some ways. It is. Stay geeky, stay healthy. Please stay alive. I love you all. Peace.